to order it and establish it with what? With judgment. What is it that establishes his kingdom? His kingdom is established by judgment, according to this. So it says, with judgment and justice from that time forward, even how long? Forever. How long is his kingdom going to last when he sits on the throne of David as a result of using the key that's on his shoulder? His kingdom is going to last forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Now, do you see all of the ideas that are coming through here? You have, first of all, the Messiah. The Messiah has a key. The key is on his shoulder. With the key, he opens a door. And by going in through the door, he's going to establish his what? He's going to establish his kingdom. And how is he going to establish his kingdom? He's going to establish it with judgment and with justice, according to this. So if he's going to go into the door, he's going there to get his what? To get his kingdom by performing a work of judgment. Critically important. And this, of course, is the source of Revelation 3, 7, and 8. Because there you have the idea of the key, the open door, the shut door. So wherever the door leads, the key that opens the door leads to the judgment and to taking over the government or the what? Or the kingdom. Are you following what I'm saying? This is critically important. Now, the question is, where does this door lead to? The fact is, folks, that the book of Revelation mentions two doors. Now, let's discuss, first of all, the first door and where that first door leads to in the book of Revelation. Go with me to Revelation chapter 4 and verses 1 and 2. We're going to talk about the first door and where that first door leads to when that door is opened. Revelation 4 verses 1 and 2. And while you're looking for that text, if I can just mention that we have studied this text in the Genesis series. We had a whole presentation on this particular chapter, and the title of that presentation was The War Hero Returns. And in fact, this chapter is describing, chapter 4 is describing the preparation of the heavenly throne room to receive Jesus, who is coming back from earth as a conqueror to heaven at his ascension. And then chapter 5 describes how Jesus comes into the presence of his Father. He actually arrives in chapter 5, and his Father gives him the book or the scroll, which is the testament of the human race. And now he's going to reveal who is going to inherit with him, who is going to inherit the kingdom with him. Now, notice Revelation chapter 4 and verses 1 and 2. After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open, where? In heaven. So is there an open door in heaven in this verse? Yes. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set up where? In heaven. Is the throne inside the door? There's an open door, right? And John, in vision, goes through the door, and inside the door he sees a what? He sees a throne. Now, we don't have time to go over what we've already studied, but allow me just to mention that there in chapter 4, we have a throne, and it continues saying that there was one who sat on the throne. You'll notice that there was only one on the throne in Revelation chapter 4. Now, he's not the only one there. We're told that also around that one throne where there is one individual seated, there are 24 thrones where the 24 elders are seated. By the way, the one who is seated on the throne is God the Father. Those who are seated on the 24 thrones, which are known as the 24 elders, we've already studied this, represent the representatives of the worlds that never sinned, of the sinless realms of the universe. The worlds have representatives, in other words, in the heavenly court. There present also are the four living creatures. We've studied that those represent the cherubim and the seraphim. But as you look at chapter 4, you discover that there are some elements that are missing. First of all, Jesus isn't mentioned in chapter 4. He's absent. In fact, let's notice Revelation chapter 3 and verse 21, something very interesting that Jesus says about himself. Revelation 3 verse 21. Jesus says, and this is the conclusion to the message of the Laodicean church, to him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. Where did Jesus sit when he went to heaven? When he ascended to heaven, where did he sit? He sat on his Father's throne. So how many should be on the throne? After the ascension, 2. But in Revelation 4, how many are on the throne? 1. So it must mean that in Revelation 4, the second person has not arrived yet. Chapter 4 describes the heavenly throne room prepared for the arrival of Jesus in chapter 5. And we know that because Jesus himself says that when he ascended to heaven, he sat with his Father on his throne. In that case, there should be 2 on the throne. But in Revelation 4, there's only 1. So in Revelation 4, there's no reference to Jesus. There's no reference to angels. The angels, there's cherubim and seraphim, but the angelic host is not there in chapter 4. There is no reference to redemption in chapter 4. No reference whatever to redemption. And all of the songs that are sung by the elders and the 4 living creatures praise the Father who is seated on the throne because he's the creator. In other words, he's not praised because he's the Redeemer, but because he's the creator. So chapter 4 is describing the preparation of the heavenly throne room before the arrival of Jesus. And by the way, the reason why Jesus is not there in chapter 4, and the reason why the angelic host is not there either, is because Jesus at that moment is being escorted by the angels, the cloud. Remember, he was caught up in a cloud when he came back to heaven? He was caught up by the cloud of angels, and now he's ascending to heaven. And in chapter 4, the throne room is prepared with the cherubim, the seraphim, God the Father, and the representatives of the worlds to receive Jesus, who is coming back as a conqueror. And meanwhile, the heavenly beings are singing honor and glory and praise to the Father who is seated upon the throne. And they're praising him not because he's the Redeemer. They're praising him because he is the what? Because he is the creator. Because the Redeemer has not arrived yet. Are you with me or not? Now, where is this scene taking place? Where is this scene of Revelation 4 and Revelation 5 where Jesus actually arrives as the Lamb? It says he comes to where his Father is, and suddenly all of the angelic hosts are around the throne. In what place in heaven is this taking place? Where in heaven does this door lead to where this throne is, where Jesus goes when he ascends to heaven? The fact is, there's no doubt that this is taking place in the holy place of the sanctuary. Allow me to give you 2 explicit reasons in Revelation chapter 4. Notice Revelation chapter 4 and verse 5. It says there, and from the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices. And now notice this. 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Now, let me ask you, where were the 7 lamps of fire in the Hebrew sanctuary? They were in the holy place. So the throne here is where the 7-branch candlestick is. And the 7-branch candlestick was in the holy place in the Hebrew sanctuary. So where is the scene of Revelation 4 taking place? It's taking place in the holy place. And by the way, chapter 5 is in the same place. If you continue reading chapter 5, it's not a different location. It's the same location. The only difference is that Jesus now arrives with the angelic host at his ascension and presents himself before his Father as the Lamb, as though he had been slain. Now, secondly, the second reason why this is taking place in the holy place is because of what we find in Revelation 5 and verse 8. Go with me to Revelation chapter 5 and verse 8. It says there, now when he had taken the scroll, now Jesus takes the scroll in chapter 5 because he's arrived, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb.